everybody. I am Dr. Olivia Joseph here. I don't have my partner in crime, Dr. Anthony Pasek, who is the other doctor in the functional medicine department, here with me today because he's with patients. And next week, I will be in the sun on the beach, so you get to enjoy Dr. Anthony speaking about some fun stuff, nutrition, diet, lifestyle, functional medicine related. So for those of you I don't know, it's a pleasure to meet you. For those faces that I get to see here in the office, I'm sorry if I don't get to spend more time speaking to you about nutrition because I still work with people one-on-one, but we love producing this content to bring to all of our patients, whether you're working in the functional medicine department or not, and also for you to share this information with your friends and family members because health issues, including vitamin D deficiency, are so prevalent among Americans. So let's go ahead and get started. Vitamin D is what a lot of people call the sunshine vitamin. It's called the sunshine vitamin because our bodies are designed to make it. Our bodies, if they're really efficient in making it, can make up to 1,000 units per minute when that sun shines on your skin, large body parts without sunscreen. So let's break that down a little bit because a lot of people are afraid of the sun. A lot of people wear sunscreen. My skincare contains sunscreen. I don't walk around a lot with my large body parts exposed, chest, back. Legs are a good place too. The sun shining in your eyes first thing in the morning for 10 minutes when the sun rises starts stimulating melatonin production, which improves sleep at night. So speaking about vitamin D though, it's not something you get in your diet. I'm going to say that again. It is not something you get in your diet. There are some foods that are enriched with vitamin D. Usually they're enriched with vitamin D2, which is not as bioavailable, which means it doesn't absorb as well as vitamin D3. Okay, so you'll find some D2 in foods, fortified in foods like milk. Another thing you might find that contains vitamin D naturally are some foods like eggs, the yolk of the egg, salmon, things like that. But you don't get a high amount in food at all. You cannot rely on diet to get your vitamin D. So in theory, and this is only in theory because the world is a melting pot. People live all over the world these days. When it used to be segregated a little bit more before the world was so small, people with blonde hair, blue eyes, light skin would make vitamin D more efficiently than somebody with dark skin, dark hair, dark eyes. So if you think about this, it's because the regions where these really light-skinned, blue-eyed, blonde people come from have very, very, very short winters and they don't have as much sunlight as other regions. So these people had to be very efficient in making it. Think about regions where people have very dark skin, dark hair, dark eyes. These tend to be much sunnier climates where there's a lot of sunlight, an abundance of sunlight, so they don't have to be as efficient in making vitamin D because they get constant exposure. The world doesn't work that way anymore because we've migrated. Another thing we have more of now than ever before in history is inflammation. When you have high levels of inflammation, we can measure this through a marker called c-reactive protein. We see c-reactive protein elevated in people with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, people sometimes with allergies, food allergies, infections within the body, viral infections. What happens when c-reactive protein is elevated is that vitamin D all gets used up to fight against the inflammation. This is such a common cause that I see today. So no matter what your skin color, hair color, eye color is, it's very important that we base your vitamin D needs based on what your levels are in the summer and in the winter. So I like to test people twice a year. I like to test them in the summer when they're not supplementing to see how efficient they are in making it. And I like to test them in the winter to see how much they need to be supplementing. And if you're already supplementing in the winter, you can still test. That allows us to see if your dosage is high enough because I'll dose vitamin D3 oftentimes with K2 or MK7 to enhance absorption. That K2 is also very, very good for cardiovascular health, blood health, even bone structure. We'll use vitamin K or MK7 used a lot by cardiologists to pull calcium out of the bloodstream because you don't want calcium in your bloodstream, you want it in your bones. That's why it's also good for bone structure. And I actually just came across a research article that as people age, I believe this article was on the aging of women, that their bones in their face, their bone structure starts to atrophy, which is part of the aging process, and that using MK7 or K2 helps to support that bone structure in the face. And the reason I'm telling you this is because whatever your motivating factor is, if it's how you look, if it's how you feel, if it's how your blood work looks, you probably need vitamin D. So I would say the average middle of the road for adults I recommend is 5,000 units daily in the winter months. And make sure you take that with food or a meal containing fat. Now, a question I get a lot is that too much? I don't know, that's why you check. It's probably not too much, but kids usually will get between 500 units and 2,000 units daily in the winter months. Little ones, probably closer to 500. As they get a bit older, 1,000 to 2,000 would be more sufficient. Kids don't have as much inflammation as we have, and they spend a lot more time outdoors, and their skin is uncovered a lot more than when we become adults. So I do see some people who do need 10,000 units daily, and I much prefer 10,000 units of D3 with K2 over a prescription 50,000 unit once a week of D2, because D2 is not as bioavailable as D3. It does not have the vitamin K2 to enhance absorption, and you're much more likely to develop something like vitamin toxicity when you take synthetic vitamins versus natural ones. In my entire 17 years in practice, I've seen one case of vitamin D toxicity, one, and this was with prescription vitamin D. I've never seen it with vitamin D3. The one thing I will tell you is if you're taking vitamin D3, 5,000 units a day with food, and you eat healthy and you don't have a lot of inflammation and you get your vitamin D levels checked and they're still suboptimal or low, what it could be is that all vitamins are not created equally. Vitamin D especially, when I see people who are getting that type of lackluster result in taking vitamin D, I'm like, let me switch your brand to one that I know contains the D3 per capsule because it's manufactured and tested to do that. Because how manufacturing works is what is on the label legally should be in the bottle, but it doesn't mean that there's an equal dosage per every pill. So sometimes that's when I'll switch to really, really regulated brands that we know that based on their manufacturing and testing processes, that's how much you see per capsule. And sometimes that's the icing on the cake, or sometimes what it is somebody just needs more vitamin D, such as 10,000 units, especially if they're in a very, very, very deficient state. So what I will say is you may have a vitamin D receptor gene mutation that makes you inefficient in making vitamin D. That's your genes. The other thing could be hair, skin, eye color, the region that you live in. Another thing could be high levels of inflammation coming from a variety of things: nutritional deficiencies, toxicity, food allergies, infections, viruses. So vitamin D is great for bone health, great for hormone health, great for immune system function, great for bone health and bone density. You need to have adequate levels of vitamin D, and just because your levels are in the normal range does not mean you have adequate levels. The normal range is ridiculous. It's 30 to 100. So if you're below 30, you're not a little deficient, you're severely deficient. I've seen people with levels as low as 8, 9, 10, 19, even 29 in my book is way too low. I like to see that around a 55. Now that's my average that I like to see it. There's no reason for it to be over 70, no reason for it to be below 45. So take that into consideration. Vitamin D is an extremely important nutrient because it has over 2,000 functions in the body. That's why it's tied into your bones, your immune system, as well as your hormones. But vitamin D's job is to bring oxygen to every cell in your body. That's also the job of iron, and that's also the job of free T3, which is one of your thyroid hormones. Those three give you energy. One of the biggest reasons we hit fall, winter, and it happens to be cold season, flu season, when people suffer from seasonal affective disorder, is because of vitamin D deficiency. So please, please, please do not fall victim to something that is completely preventable. Make sure you take enough, Make sure you get your levels checked to make sure you're taking enough, because this is probably one of the core, foundational, most important nutrients that you have to have in adequate amounts just to feel good, but to have normal cellular function. So you guys might have some questions about vitamin D. Post them in the comments. Make sure you share this with your friends and families so they don't suffer unnecessarily. And this is not just about adults. We see vitamin D deficiency in children. I just saw a little girl who is 13 or 14 years old and her vitamin D level was like 9. And she is suffering significantly with fatigue, as well as cognitive, mood, mental health symptoms. And so much of that can come from nutritional deficiencies. I'm not saying it's all a nutritional deficiency, but let's at least evaluate and rule those things out. So many things go away naturally. And if I was telling you my core nutrition, that if everybody was on, so many symptoms would just be eliminated on their own naturally without you going too aggressively and having a bunch of testing and going to a bunch of doctors. It would be vitamin D3, especially in the winter months. Magnesium glycinate. At puberty age, or like age 10 and up, in everybody with dinner or before bed, a great quality multivitamin that gives you enough of your baseline nutrients, including your methyl Bs, like methylcobalamin, methylfolate, to help prevent deficiencies, because you're not getting enough nutrition from food. I can tell you that. We'll do a whole nother video on that. Fish oil and essential fatty acids. They're not as popular and sexy as they once were, but I will tell you, fish oil and essential fatty acids are phenomenal for cardiovascular health, mental health, cognitive health, joint health, inflammation, all of the above. So are there accurate home tests for vitamin D? No, because that does require a venipuncture. So I know there's a lot of testing you can get from a finger stick, which you can purchase in an at-home kit. Let me look into that. I don't know if vitamin D can be tested on a finger stick. I'm under the impression it has to be done through venipuncture. But there are walk-in labs, do-it-yourself labs, at-home labs that you have access to accurately check your vitamin D levels. And if I were doing that, I wouldn't just check vitamin D. I would check D, iron, and ferritin, and then I would look at some inflammatory markers like a C-reactive protein, a homocysteine, if you really want to get into it. So nutritional deficiencies are very prevalent. I see them every day. I see them in a majority of people that I do baseline blood work on. We are very overfed, but we are very undernourished. So the last thing I want to say in those key nutrients is the right type of probiotic. We'll talk more about probiotics and gut health. What I say is the right type is it's refrigerated, it doesn't contain dairy, that it's been manufactured in a way where it's been tested. So at end production, it has the amount of bacteria that's in the capsule. But I will just put this disclaimer, and if you take a probiotic and you get bloated, if you take a probiotic and it makes your symptoms worse, you probably have some type of dysbiosis or bad bug overgrowth in your gut. We'll do another video on that, and I'll be happy to get into greater detail. In the meantime, stay healthy. Start focusing on vitamin D as we go into the fall, winter months. It's not a coincidence that cold and flu season hits right around holidays, January, February, and even March, because January, February, March is when your vitamin D levels are going to be at their absolute lowest if you don't supplement. So post your questions, comments below. Make sure you share this with your friends and family members, and we're here to answer any questions. Bye.